They were stronger than us. Their brains were as large as ours. They tamed fire, hunted mammoths, buried their dead, and ruled the frozen world of Ice Age Europe for over 300,000 years, 10 times longer than all of recorded human history. And then, around 40,000 years ago, they simply vanished. Every last one of them. Gone. They were the Neanderthals, the other humans. And what happened to them is one of the darkest and most haunting mysteries in our entire story. Were they wiped out by a collapsing climate? Hunted into extinction by our own ancestors? Or did something far stranger happen? Something that means they may never have truly disappeared at all. Because here is the part that should send a chill down your spine. If your ancestry reaches beyond Africa, then a piece of a Neanderthal is inside your body, right now. This is the story of the other humans we once shared the Earth with, and what really happened to them. They were stronger than us. Their brains were as large as ours. They tamed fire, hunted mammoths, buried their dead, and ruled the frozen world of Ice Age Europe for over 300,000 years. 10 times longer than all of recorded human history. And then, around 40,000 years ago, they simply vanished. Every last one of them. Gone. They were the Neanderthals, the other humans. And what happened to them is one of the darkest and most haunting mysteries in our entire story. Were they wiped out by a collapsing climate? Hunted into extinction by our own ancestors? Or did something far stranger happen? Something that means they may never have truly disappeared at all. Because here is the part that should send a chill down your spine. If your ancestry reaches beyond Africa, then a piece of a Neanderthal is inside your body, right now. This is the story of the other humans we once shared the Earth with, and what really happened to them. To understand the Neanderthals, you have to understand the world that made them, and it was a world almost unimaginably harsh. For much of their reign, Europe was gripped by the Ice Age. Vast sheets of ice spread down from the north, and beyond them stretched a frozen, treeless expanse known as the Mammoth Steppe, a brutal, wind-scoured grassland where winters were long, savage, and deadly. This was no gentle Eden. It was one of the most demanding environments any human has ever called home. And the Neanderthals didn't just endure it, they mastered it. The land they walked was haunted by giants. Woolly mammoths, taller than a house, moved across the steppe in herds. Woolly rhinos, armored in shaggy fur, lowered their horns at anything that came too close. Cave bears the size of a small car slept in the caverns the Neanderthals themselves wanted to shelter in. Cave lions and hyenas stalked the same prey. To live here was to share the land with monsters, and astonishingly, to hunt them. This is where the Neanderthal body finally makes sense. Every part of it was an answer to the cold. Their stocky, compact build conserved heat. Their broad chests held powerful lungs. Even their famously large noses had a purpose, warming and moistening the freezing air before it reached the lungs. They were, quite literally, engineered by hundreds of thousands of years of winter. But surviving the cold was only half the battle. They also had to eat. And on the Mammoth Steppe, eating meant hunting some of the most dangerous animals alive. The Neanderthals were not distance hunters. Their weapons were heavy thrusting spears, which meant they had to get close, terrifyingly close, to a panicking 2-ton animal and drive the point home by hand. We know just how brutal this was because their bones tell us. Neanderthal skeletons are covered in healed fractures, and the pattern of those injuries, scientists noticed, looks uncannily like the wounds suffered by modern rodeo riders. People who wrestle with large, powerful animals at close range. Every successful hunt was a fight for their lives. Many did not come home. To be a Neanderthal was to risk death every time you needed to feed your family. And feed their families they did. They lived in small, tight-knit bands, sheltering in caves and rock overhangs gathered around fires against the endless dark. They were not mindless killers gorging on raw flesh. They cooked their food, and their diet was richer and more varied than the brute myth suggests. They ate the great game of the steppe, yes, but also plants, mushrooms, and where they lived along coasts, even shellfish and seals. They were adaptable, clever survivors who took whatever the land would give. Picture one of their camps on a winter night. The fire crackles at the mouth of a cave. The wind howls across the frozen steppe outside. Within the circle of light, a small family is gathered, children sleeping close for warmth, an old hunter with a limp that never healed quite right, the smell of roasting meat in the air. They have buried their dead nearby. They have cared for the one among them who can no longer hunt. They are, in every way that matters, a human family, holding back the darkness together at the very edge of the survivable world. For more than 300,000 years, scenes like this played out across Europe and Western Asia. Generation after generation, the Neanderthals were born, lived, loved, hunted, and died in this frozen kingdom. It was theirs, and theirs alone, but it would not stay that way. Far to the south, in the warmth of Africa, another kind of human had been quietly rising. And around 45,000 years ago, they began to arrive, drifting north into the Neanderthals' frozen world for the very first time. They were taller, leaner, with thinner bones and rounder skulls. They carried unfamiliar tools and wore unfamiliar ornaments. They were us, Homo sapiens. And for the first time in 300,000 years, the Neanderthals were no longer alone. For thousands of years, two different kinds of humans shared the same continent. It is one of the most extraordinary moments in our entire history, and it's easy to rush past it. So, pause for a second and let it sink in. There was a time, not in some distant alien past, but only a few hundred centuries ago, when you could have walked across Europe and met two separate species of human beings. The Neanderthals, who had ruled this land for ages, and the newcomers, Homo sapiens, freshly arrived from the south. For a span of perhaps several thousand years, both walked the earth at the same time, often in the very same regions. So what happened when they met? For a long time, we could only guess. Did they fight? Did they trade? Did they simply avoid one another, two wary people skirting the edges of each other's territory? The honest truth is that we may never know the full story of those encounters. Whether they were marked more by violence or by curiosity, by fear or by friendship. It was almost certainly all of these things, in different places and different times. But we do know one thing for certain. Something happened between them that no one expected. Something written permanently into the blood of billions of people alive today. They had children together. For most of modern history, scientists assumed the two species were entirely separate, that Neanderthals were an evolutionary dead end with no connection to us. Then, only recently, researchers managed to do something astonishing. They recovered ancient DNA from Neanderthal bones and read their genetic code. And when they compared it to ours, they found something that rewrote the textbooks. If your ancestry traces to anywhere outside of Africa, to Europe, to Asia, to the Americas, to almost anywhere on Earth, then roughly 1 to 2% of your DNA is Neanderthal. Not similar to Neanderthal, Neanderthal. The genes of those Ice Age hunters, the people we once dismissed as failed brutes, are inside you right now. They came from real encounters, real relationships, real children, born tens of thousands of years ago, between a Neanderthal and one of our own ancestors. We did not simply replace the Neanderthals. In part, we absorbed them. And that small fraction of Neanderthal DNA is not just a curiosity. It still shapes us today. The genes they pass to us influence our immune systems, our skin and hair, the way our bodies fight off certain infections, even in some cases, our risk for particular diseases. Some of what they evolved to survive the Ice Age helped our ancestors survive too. As they pushed into the cold north the Neanderthals had already conquered. In a very real sense, you are part Neanderthal. They live on in you. It is a beautiful and haunting fact. The other humans are not entirely gone because a piece of them survives in nearly every person on the planet. And yet, and this is the part that keeps the mystery alive, interbreeding alone cannot explain what happened to them. Because as a distinct people with their own world and their own way of life, the Neanderthals still vanished. The DNA proves we mingled with them, but it does not change the final outcome. Within just a few thousand years of our arrival in Europe, they were gone. The fires went out. The caves fell silent. An entire species that had endured for over 300,000 years slipped, quietly and completely, out of existence. So, if we didn't simply wipe them out, and if we even sometimes loved them, then what exactly killed the Neanderthals? That is the question that has haunted scientists for over a century. And the answer, it turns out, is not a single villain. It is a slow, tragic collision of forces, a perfect storm that closed in on the Neanderthals from every side at once. There is no single, simple answer to the death of the Neanderthals. There is no one moment, no great battle, no single catastrophe we can point to and say this is what ended them. Instead, the most likely truth is that several different forces converged on them at the worst possible time. And together, they were too much. The first force was the climate itself. Around the time the Neanderthals began to disappear, the Ice Age was entering one of its most unstable and violent phases. The climate didn't just get colder, it lurched wildly and unpredictably, swinging between bitter cold and brief warmth over mere decades. For a people whose entire way of life was finely tuned to a particular world of cold-adapted prey, this chaos was devastating. The herds they depended on shifted and thinned. The familiar landscape kept changing beneath their feet. A world they had mastered for 300,000 years was suddenly turning against them. The second force arrived from the south, on two legs: us. When Homo sapiens spread into Europe, we did not necessarily come as conquerors with weapons raised. The danger we posed was subtler, and in the long run, far deadlier. We were competition. We hunted the same animals. We sheltered in the same caves. We wanted the same land. And in that quiet, grinding competition for survival, we appear to have held a handful of crucial advantages. We came in greater numbers, and we were more connected. While Neanderthals lived in small, isolated bands, our ancestors built sprawling social networks, trading tools, materials, and ideas across vast distances, linking groups together into something larger and more resilient. We had projectile weapons, spears and darts we could throw, letting us kill at a distance, more safely and more often, while the Neanderthals still closed in for their dangerous body-to-body hunts. Our toolkits were more varied, and our culture brimmed with symbols, art, and ornament, signs perhaps of a flexible, cooperative imagination that helped us adapt faster than they could. None of this made us better in some grand cosmic sense. The Neanderthals were not stupid, and we were not destined to win. But in a brutal contest for scarce food in a collapsing climate, small advantages add up. Every animal we hunted was one the Neanderthals didn't get. Every valley we filled was one they could no longer use. And then there was the cruelty of their own numbers. The Neanderthals had never been a vast population. They lived spread thin across Europe in small bands, and their genetic diversity was low, a sign of generations of inbreeding within isolated groups. A population like that is fragile. A few bad years, a few lost hunters, a stretch of failed births, and a band could simply wink out. And there were few others nearby to replace them. Some scientists suspect disease may have played a role too, with the newcomers from Africa carrying unfamiliar illnesses against which the Neanderthals had no defense. Put it all together, and you can see the shape of the tragedy. It was probably not a war, and not a massacre. It was something slower and sadder, a vanishing. As the climate convulsed and a more numerous, more connected rival spread across their land, the small, scattered bands of Neanderthals were squeezed into ever-shrinking corners of the world. One by one, their fires went out. Their range contracted, pushed west and south into final refuges like the tip of Spain, until, around 40,000 years ago, the very last of them were gone. They did not fall in a single great battle. They faded band by band, family by family, until the frozen kingdom that had been theirs for over 300,000 years belonged to us alone. But to say they ended is not quite the whole truth, because as we've seen, a part of them refused to disappear. So, were the Neanderthals really wiped out? Did they truly come to an end? The answer, science now tells us, is both yes and no. Yes, as a distinct people with their own world and their own way of living, the Neanderthals are gone. There has not been a true Neanderthal alive on this earth for 40,000 years. Their caves are empty, their language, their stories, the meaning behind those strange stone rings in the dark, all of it died with them, lost forever. In that sense, theirs is a story of extinction, of a magnificent branch of humanity cut down and silenced. But in another sense, a stranger, gentler sense, they never fully left. Because they are still here, they are in us. That 1 to 2% of Neanderthal DNA carried by billions of people across the globe is not a fossil. It is alive. It works inside our bodies every single day, shaping who we are. Add up all those scattered fragments across all the people now living, and a remarkable truth emerges. A large portion of the Neanderthal genome still survives, distributed across humanity like the pieces of a shattered mirror. They did not vanish into nothing. They flowed into us, and through us they live on. It means the line between them and us was never as clean as we imagined. The Neanderthals were not some separate lesser creature whose extinction cleared the way for the real humans. They were family. We met them, we lived beside them, we loved them, and we carry them with us still. And their story leaves us with a thought that is genuinely humbling. For a few thousand years, Earth was home to more than one kind of human. There was nothing inevitable about which one would remain. The Neanderthals were stronger than us, every bit as intelligent, superbly adapted to their world. If the climate had broken differently, if the herds had shifted another way, if the numbers had fallen just slightly otherwise, it is entirely possible that the Neanderthals would have been the ones left standing. And it might be a Neanderthal, not a Homo sapiens, telling this story now, wondering what became of the strange, lean humans from the south who didn't quite make it. We are not here because we were destined to be. We are here in part by luck, the last humans standing, the keepers of a story that was very nearly someone else's. So the next time you picture a Neanderthal, don't picture a failure. Picture a people who survived ice ages and hunted giants, who buried their dead and cared for their weak, who endured for far longer than our own civilizations had existed, and who in the end did not entirely disappear, but live on quietly, in the blood of nearly everyone you have ever met. They were not the brutes that lost to humanity. In a way, they became part of it. The Neanderthals remind us of something easy to forget, that being the last humans on Earth was never guaranteed, and never something we earned alone. For most of our story, we shared this planet with others, and a piece of them survives in us to this day. If this journey into our lost relatives moved you, then this channel was made for you. Here at Dawn of Mankind, we bring the forgotten chapters of our origins back to life, one age at a time. So if you'd like to keep uncovering the hidden story of humanity, the other humans, the ancient mysteries, the long road that led to us, take a moment to subscribe and turn on the bell. There are so many more stories still buried, waiting to be told. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the past.